Today's Mercedes-Benz interview of the day brought to you by Mercedes-Benz. Mercedes-Benz has an SUV for you, whether it's the stylish GLC, compact GLA, the three-row GLS, or the GLE and GLC plug-in hybrids. Visit MBUSA.com for special offers. He is the peripatetic Dan Orlovsky, always on the move. And in fact, Dan, where are you right now?
Nowhere that I know what peripatetic means. I know that. But I'm just south of I think Grand Central on the way to Philly and then on the way to Baltimore.
Okay, so you're taking the Amtrak train.
You got it.
Okay. Are you in the quiet car that you might get yelled at for talking?
We are going to find out. I have no idea.
Well, let's start with your game. What do you expect? Like, how important is this game?
Oh, I think it's a big deal. I mean, obviously, Baltimore wins, they win the division, and they get to host a playoff game, and that's a huge deal to them. It's a huge deal to Harbaugh and Lamar, and Lamar's trying to cap off a very worthy MVP campaign as well. So it's a very big deal, and I think that if we're just being candid about the seeding, and you say, okay, well, if you win the division, well, someone's got to go to you, and it's more than likely going to be maybe. You'll see what happens if it's Pittsburgh or if it's the Chargers or whatnot. We asked them that, technically winning division, you might have to play the Chargers or the Steelers. Losing and not winning the division, you might get to play Houston. And I would argue most people would want to play Houston over the Steelers or the Chargers, but I think they wanted to win the division.
Okay, you're 20-point favorites against Cleveland.
Yeah.
How did Cleveland, really? Is Cleveland that bad?
Not individual talent-wise, and certainly not defensively. Defensively, when you look at their defense roster, you go, wait, a defensive player of the year candidate, and you've got linebackers that are really good. Grant Delpit's playing really good. Denzel Ward's fantastic. Now, Denzel Ward's not playing, so that's part of that. They just are so poor offensively right now. Obviously, multiple quarterbacks have played this year. Baby Zappi's playing. They don't really have somebody outside on the perimeter that's really impactful outside of Jerry Jeudy, who's having a really good year. But I don't think they're that far off as a team, but they have obviously the massive question at quarterback in the future.
We're talking to Dan Orlovsky, NFL Live, and he'll be on the call. That'll be Saturday with the Browns and the Ravens. Chris Fowler, Lewis Riddick, Laura Rutledge, kickoff 4:30 Eastern on the Mothership and also ABC. You talked about Lamar being the MVP. How much confidence is there any difference in your confidence level for him in the postseason as opposed to in previous seasons?
I would think that they're more equipped this year with the people that they have. The addition of Derrick Henry, in talking with them, both Lamar and Todd Monken and Coach Harbaugh, they can't say enough good stuff. They can't bring up Derrick's impact enough. And the way that, in their words, Todd Monken stated it really well was, if we can just stay on track, right? Stay ahead of those chains. He goes, it gates us the opportunity to run the ball again. It doesn't negate the role of Derrick Henry. And I think that's a really big deal. So I think they have more answers to defenses and what they want to do against them. I think I'm way more confident in Lamar. I've always been confident in Lamar in that regard. I'm more confident just because this is probably the best he's played and it's the slowest the game's ever been for him. There's also the reality of being said that he's got to go do it when it's win or go home against, a Patrick Mahomes, if that's the case. And so when it's that game, he's got to go play his best football. And until he does that in that moment, it's fair to have that question linger.
Fill in the blank here. The Buffalo Bills only having 2 Pro Bowl players is blank.
A testament to the depth of their football team. It's a little bit of a testament to, or a reminder that their division is not very deep. It's not, loaded with really good teams. It's also a testament to how great Josh has played and how much his performance has really masked some of the youth in their team that's developing and also the injuries they've dealt with.
Should he win the MVP? Will he win the MVP?
I think he should, yes. I think that there's a ton of guys capable of making the case for it. There's probably 3 or 4 that are going to get a heavy amount of the votes. I think that Offensive Player of the Year is a very statistical generated award. MVP has to be a visually justified or visually dependent award. You have to be able to watch what that person is doing with what he's given against what he's doing it against, and just evaluate like how much you think that performance was necessary for that play to be successful, and then that obviously win to be successful. So I think he will. I think he should. I've said this for a couple of weeks now, Dan. If you want to vote for Lamar, that's 1,000% justified. If you wanted to vote for Saquon, if he was going to break the record, because I think it was going to be more realistic if he did, 1,000% justified. I've said it last week. If Joe Burrow somehow drags the Bengals to the playoffs, it's going to be hard not to vote for him. So there is the reality that it is a very difficult MVP award vote this year. But I do think that because of all the things that I just mentioned, Josh is probably the one that I lean towards. Yes.
Sam Darnold is a Pro Bowler. Patrick Mahomes is not.
Who would have thought? Who would have thought? You know, everyone's making a big stink about that. I think if you asked Patrick in early November, late October, was he playing good football or hit to his standard, he would have said no. Has he probably had the most challenging road this year when it comes to everything that's been thrown at them, losing Rashee Rice and the overhaul of their offensive receiving unit and the offensive line, specifically left tackle and right tackle playing so poorly? Yes. Now he's played much more to his style over the last 6 or 7 weeks, and he's one of those guys that could be in the MVP conversation if we're just being candid about the MVP award and the reality of it. But he didn't play his best to start the season, and Baker's been absolutely sensational this year. So I don't have a massive, massive issue with it.
Okay, but Minnesota has an issue here, a good issue here with keeping Sam,
Yes.
and then you have J.J. McCarthy. I'll let you be the GM here in Minnesota.
Yeah, a month ago, I would have said no. We're going to move on from Sam. I just am 10 or 11 months removed from not wanting to pay Kirk Cousins a certain amount of dollars. I don't want to change that philosophy. We really like JJ. We liked him coming out. He was really showing well in the preseason. But I do think what's happened over the past couple of weeks is really hard to put value on how a team feels about a guy, how a locker room feels about a player, a leader. And if you have that guy that now can play at a really high level, and you have now the impact that is really difficult to put your finger on in your locker room, you can see it though. I think you got to have a conversation of keeping them. Now, is there a certain number you don't want to get to? Maybe. And we all know that if you give it to that quarterback, the roster becomes lesser. But I do think it's a conversation.
We haven't had a lot of conversation, or it doesn't feel like there's national narrative with Defensive Player of the Year. And I was wondering,
It's a tough one this year.
Can Patrick Surtain of the Broncos steal this?
No question. I mean, he's the best player at his position on a top 3 defense in the NFL. It will matter. It will matter if they get in. That just will to voters. It's. I do think that there is something too hard to vote for guys at those awards if the team is not in the playoffs. So that's another reason why Denver's game is such a big deal. You have to have his name very much so near the top of your list. You probably have Myles Garrett near the top of your list, and Zach Bond near the top of your list. Maybe Jalen Carter. I would throw in Kyle Hamilton. If you remember, like 7-8 weeks in this season, the Ravens defense was terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, they were really bad. And all of a sudden there was one change. Simply put, they moved Kyle Hamilton back to safety, and they moved their best player further from the ball, and it's made their defense one of the best in the NFL. And if you ask anybody in that building, they say he saved their season. And I think for a team that is going to be, likely a top 3 seed and a defense that is playing as good as anybody's in the NFL, to have people say that move and that player saved their season, you've got to make sure that his name is very much so in that conversation.
What do people talk to you about when they see you? Like you're on an Amtrak train going, to Pennsylvania.
Most people that come up to me say one of 3 things. Number one, I love how much you and Stephen A argue. So that's a huge thing. They're like, keep giving it to Stephen A. Don't let him say that to you too. They say, "Man, love your show or love your work and this and that," which I'm super grateful for. Or three, they'll bring up like, "Hey, that really wasn't a fart on McAfee show, was it?" So those are like the three most prevalent things.
So you have really strange eating habits. They're not bringing up
Yes.
stepping out of the end zone anymore.
Not much. It really doesn't happen that not, now, mainly because I've probably had a couple more embarrassing things happen since then. But no, the stepping, the running out of the end zone has not come up often. Here and there, but not nearly as much as it did say 2 or 3 years ago.
I'm happy for you because it felt
Yeah,
like,
yeah, it's growth.
yeah. And the first thing I always think of is that you cheated on your 40-yard dash, that you had a 38-yard dash to improve your time. If you don't cheat on your 40-yard dash, are you in this position at
Oh God,
ESPN?
no, not at all. No, not at all.
So it's a
I
great
try
lesson for the kids out there. If
do
scouts
what
are
you got to
coming
do.
over, how about you measure out 38 yards with the cones, and then you have a better 40-yard dash time?
Dan, I think it's a lesson of whatever it takes, man. Like, listen, whatever it takes. At some point, we gotta go meet our creator, and we gotta, have that moment of I did this and that. But it's whatever it takes. It's funny, dude, because on New Year's Eve, I'm not a big New Year's person, but New Year's Eve, my wife is. Our boys just turned 13 on December 28th. We have triplet boys, and so she and our 9-year-old daughter. So for years now, we've never been the big party family, but she always does like a game night with them. And on every hour leading up to New Year's, she does this game. And so as they've gotten older, the games have evolved. And so we were with some friends this past time, and she lined up like 8 solo cups. And we had to throw ping pong balls into the 8 cups, and the teams of two. And the first team to win was like the winner. And I played me and my son against two of his buddies. And these freaking kids were cheating left and right. And I was calling them out like, "You guys are freaking standing behind the line, and you're cheating, or you're only supposed to have one ball in your hand." And so it's funny that you bring that up because they were like winning. And I'm like, "You guys are freaking cheating, dude.
Yeah, but you weren't drinking. This is usually what you do
This
with,
is water." Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
just water. Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds like a crazy time at the Orlovsky house. That is wild. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, have fun there with Baltimore, and
Thank you.
always great to talk to you. Thanks for making time in your travel there. We appreciate it
Of
as always.
course. Of course, bud. Good to see you, man.
That's Dan Orlovsky of the Mothership. So he'll be on the call. It'll be Chris Fowler, Lewis Riddick, Laura Rutledge, kickoff 4:30 Eastern on the Mothership and ABC.